Yeah. So whatever we have seen yesterday, it was single dimensional array. So when it is single dimensional array, then what you can do is you can just store one collection of values, right? But sometimes what I need to do is it may not be just one collection. Then I need to store the values in a multi dimensions, like maybe in the form of rows and columns, so that I can specify whenever I want to retrieve the data. I say instead of specifying first value, second value like that, first row, first column value, first row, second value, or second row, first, second row, third, something like that. So that is two dimensional. I'm storing the value, but in certain situations I may need to store it in three dimensional. Like same thing when it comes to the Excel. Instead of saying first row, first column directly, then I have to say like this: first sheet, first row, first column, first sheet, first row, second column, first sheet, first row, third column. So the value is coming in three dimensional here, right? So like this, not only just three dimensional, you can create till 60 dimensions. But as I told again, we never use there's many dimensions. The maximum we use is either 2 dimension or maximum 3 dimension. That is very rare case, even 3 dimension also. But 2 dimension is very frequently we use, and single dimension is quite common. Okay. Then when it comes to the single dimensional array, how did we declare that? It's a dim my array of maybe 4 or maybe 5, or just I'll give like this. What does it mean? Dim my array of 5. How many values it could be? 6 values, because it starts from 0. Count starts from 0. Index number starts from 0 here. 0th index to 5th index it is. So you can store 6 values to each index. Then it is single dimensional array. Then how can I specify it is a multi-dimensional array or 2-dimensional array is in the declaration, or you can make it as dynamic and then you can make it as a 2-dimensional, but I'm using fixed size here, comma 3. What I'm doing there, it says 5 comma 3. What does it mean? It is 2-dimensional. Okay, so first one is the 1 dimension, second dimension is, the second one is a second dimension here. This is 1 dimension, this is 1 dimension. And when you have 2-dimensional, then each dimension, first dimension is considered as rows and second dimension is considered as columns. Then how many rows and how many columns it is? No. 6 rows, 4 columns. Each dimension starts from 0. Remember that. Okay, so it is 0 comma 0 to 5 comma 3. That is equivalent to 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That array is equivalent to that array. So 5 rows, 6 rows total and 4 columns. Okay. Then, sorry, not this. So when I have multi-dimensional array like this, how can I store the values in multi-dimension? When it is single dimension, how I was storing, how we stored is a my array of 0 equals to so and so. But now when you say my array of 0, you are directly saying first value, second value, third value like that. If when it is single dimension, then that is fine. You can use like that. But when it is in multi-dimension, then whenever you want to enter any value, every dimension should be specified there. Now how we can store the values? Now the dimension 2-dimensional is nothing but equivalent to this table. Whenever I want to store any value in this table, I have to say like this: enter the value in first row, first column. Enter the value in first row, second column. Enter the value in first row, third column. Enter the value in second row, first column. Like this, I have to specify the row number and I must have to specify the column number as well, mandatorily. Then, how that can be done is whenever you want to enter the value in multi-dimension, you should not specify only single dimensional value here. You must have to specify multi-dimension. Sorry, both the dimensions. It starts from 0, 0. My array of 0, 0 equal to I'll say val1. My array of 0, 1 equal to val2. Then my array of 0, 2 val3. My array of 0, 3. So, oops, val4. So like this, we need to specify each and every dimension. So you cannot directly say my array of 0 or my array is just a variable name. You can give any name there. But you should not give only one dimension when it is multiple dimensions. You have to specify row number, column number, first dimension number, second dimension number, so that the value will be set to appropriate cell in the array memory. You got that? Okay. Then same thing can happen for dynamic array as well. So you can make the array as a dynamic, and then what you can do, whenever you are redefining the array, you can give that as a multi-dimension. Let's say for example, dim my array of empty parentheses. Why it is empty parentheses? Because when I want to make it as a dynamic array, while declaring an array, like dim we have declared, right? You should not provide any size. When you don't provide any size there, any number there, then that becomes as dynamic array automatically. Then when you are redefining an array, then this time you can give 2 dimensions. And remember that when it is a dynamic array, then first time I want to give 2 dimension, but later when you are redefining, then you can create more dimensions also. That means first time what I will do is redeem my array of 5, 6 or 5, 2. That means 6 rows, 3 columns. Then later I realize that after storing the values, then the values are coming in multi-dimension. After some time, again what I can do, I can increase the dimension number. 5, 3, 4. That means 3 dimension I can make it as. Or I can decrease the dimension count also. So like this, what we can do is you can increase or decrease the dimension numbers in the array, in the dynamic array only, not in the fixed size array. We'll come back to this. I will explain that multi-dimension part little later. But just for now, only theoretical knowledge is required, because anyway we are going to work with the database, we are going to work with Excel, and we are going to work with the files and all, right? So in such cases, all the data, generally we read the data from external sources like this, Excel database, all those. Then we have to store them into an array. Then when I want to retrieve the data from Excel, then it will be 2-dimensional by default. When I want to retrieve the data from a particular sheet, then array has to be 2-dimensional. So that first row, first column value in the Excel should come into first row, first column of array. First row, second column of Excel should come into first row, second column of array. Okay, so like that. So that is 2-dimensional. Then sometimes when you are working with an Excel, entire Excel data should come into one array. Entire Excel data into an array means, okay, so entire Excel means there will be like this, not only just rows and columns, right? First I have to say sheets, these many sheets and these many rows and columns. First row, first column, first sheet, first row, first column, first sheet, first row, second column. Like this I need to store it in 3-dimensional. We have to see them, how those can be stored. So there again we will come back to the multi-dimensional array. But for now, the basic I am going to explain, but not completely. Again we have to come back to that multi-dimensional when we discuss about these topics. Okay. Now what I am doing is here, my array of 1, 0, 1, 0, my array of 1, 1, val 2 my array of 1 comma 2 is equals to val 3 my array of 1 comma 3 equals to. So like this you can store. So you need to say again 2 comma 0, 2 comma 1, 2 comma 2, 2 comma 3, 3 comma 0, 3 comma 1, 3 comma 2, 3 comma 3. So like this generally you need to store all the values. But in case if you are not if you are not using any cell there, then by default empty value will be placed. That's it. You got that what I'm saying? So this is how two-dimensional will be. Then same thing as I told, this can be a dynamic array also. What I'm doing is here, now that is dynamic array. I have given empty parentheses. Then how do you redefine the dynamic array? As I told, you cannot directly store the values in the dynamic array. You must have to redefine it. Then redeem what I'm doing, I'm storing 2 rows 4 columns, or you can directly give 5 comma 3 under. Then after some time, then okay, so initially I got only 2 rows of data, so that's the reason I said 2 rows and 4 columns. Then later sometime what happened is I got some more rows of data, or 3 more sets of data I got. So that means I need to increase 3 more rows or 2 more rows. Then what I need to do is here, if I say redeem my array of 3 comma 3, what I am doing here, column count is same but row count is increased. Earlier I had only 2 rows, so that I had given as 1 comma 3. Later I realized that there are 2 more rows have been created, then I need to store the data for these 2 rows also. Now earlier only 2 rows created in the array, since 2 more rows added in external file, so same 2 more rows have to be increased in array also. That's the reason while redefining I am increasing the size of the rows. Then is it right way to do? No. Yesterday I told when you use redeem, it will reset the memory always. So when it resets the memory, the values will be whatever the values you already stored in the array. Then see here, I'm storing some of the values, right? Whenever you resize again or whenever you use redeem, memory will be reset. When the memory is reset, all the values whatever you already given there in the array will be gone, will be erased. But I don't want to erase those values, just only memory has to be increased, that's it. Then in such case what you need to do is, instead of directly using, use preserve. Then you say my array of 2 comma 0 equals to something. I'm just giving some value and let's see whether it will work or not. Containing folder. What it says? Line number 16. Redeem preserve. Subscript out of range. I'll tell you why. The problem is here. Now it is working, right? No error has been thrown. I mean, I just increased the columns. 1 comma 4 means row numbers are same, but columns I am increasing. No error has been thrown. I mean, I am not using any message box. Only if it doesn't throw anything, that means it is accepting. That's what our criteria is. This time what it is showing? Yeah. The reason because when it is two-dimensional array, or when it is a dynamic array and when it is two-dimensional, then you will not be able to increase the rows directly. You can increase the columns later. I mean, in case if the collection of values have got changed, then you can increase the columns or decrease the columns directly, but you will not be able to increase the rows. Okay, so let's see if I'm increasing both, whether it accepts or not. Still it is showing. So what it does is, whenever the collection size is being increased, then you will not be able to increase the row count. You will be able to increase the column count, and you will not be able to increase the row count always. Okay, so this is one of the drawback of using the dynamic array here. But there is an alternate way. Okay, so we'll come back to that alternate way later. But by default, you will not be able to increase the row count. But what I will do is this time 1, 3, 2. What I am doing this time? Let's see whether it will work or not. It is still doing the wait. Then there is a problem here. Script out of range. So dimension is not being increased. Okay. No, actually the dimension is not being increased, and there is some problem. I'll check it. It's accepting. It's not accepting one more dimension also. So let it be. I'll just check that why it is not taking. But actually it's supposed to take. I mean, you can increase the dimension count, or you can increase the dimension count also. Okay. I'll come to that part in some time later. As I told you, we have the alternate ways, right? Then we will use those alternate ways. But this is too early for you. There are certain methods we need to use for that. That's a default nature they have set like that. So they have set the nature of the array, like dynamic array like that. Okay? Yes. But for fixed size also you will not be able to increase anyway. At least dynamic you can increase the size at any time. But fixed size, whatever you have defined in the beginning, the same size will be, right? Then there is no way that you can increase for fixed size. But dynamic you will be able to increase, but as of now we are able to increase only the columns. Okay, so column count we can increase, but row count it is not accepting, but there is an alternate way to do that. Okay, I will come to that part in some time. Sorry? Increase, decrease. Same. 1 minute. I'm just decreasing the size there. When I decrease the size, right? It was 1, 3. Now I'm using 1, 2. That means column count I decreased. When I decrease the column count, what happens, whatever you have stored in a fourth column, that value will be gone. 1, 3, 0, 3. That value will be eliminated. So you can decrease. Even in the normal array also, I mean single dimensional array also, earlier you can say the first initial size you can say my array of 10. Later not 11 values, I have got only 6 values. Then you can say my array of 5. You can decrease. Then when you decrease, right, whatever the index sizes that you have removed, you have eliminated, the values in this index sizes also will be eliminated. Here you remove the index size 3, then from 3 to 2 you have set. So whatever the values that you have set in index number 3, then those values will be eliminated. Remaining values will be there like that. So it will be there 0, 1, from 0, 0 to 1, 2. Those values will be there. 0, 3 and 1, 3. The values whatever you have stored inside them will be eliminated because that particular index has been eliminated. Okay. Then now this is how generally use multi-dimensions, but as I told again, we will come back to this and with real examples. We have to see some real examples for this. maybe whenever we use Excels and whenever we use databases, we'll come back to this, and then again we will discuss about multi-dimensions. Okay. For now, just understand, like this, we can create multiple dimensions to store more values. Instead of storing, I have 5 collection of values, then instead of creating 5 different arrays, then I say each collection of values I will keep it in one row. Like that, if I have 5 values, 5 columns I will create. One row, I will fill in all 5 columns. Then when I have 5 collections like that, I will create 5 rows. And each collection will be in one row, like that. So you can store multiple dimensions like that, so that in one array, you can store multiple collection of values. So this is the main use of using multi-dimensional array, to store multiple collections in one array. Mainly the real example where we use is, or maybe whenever you are getting the values from Excel, or sometimes we get the value in the application, and in the applications it will be displayed in the tabular format, right? So then when it is displayed in the tabular format, then all the values I have to take. But when I take a single dimensional array, then I cannot differentiate between rows and columns, right? So it has to be like, maybe assume that marked list. Then how I have to store marked list? Student wise, each student is nothing but one row. When I'm storing the same values in the array, even array also it has to be like this. Each student is nothing but first row, one row, and then the marks are nothing but the columns. So when I want to store the values like that, then you use 2-dimensional. Or when you use Excel, you can use sometimes, I want to take entire data from a sheet into one sheet into an array. Then in that case, 2-dimensional it is. Or from entire Excel file, I need to take into one array. Then 3-dimensional it will become. Sheet, rows and columns. Okay. So let's wait till that time. Then okay, again we will come back to this, and then you can understand much better that time. Sorry? Yeah, that's what. Wait for that time. So to get till Excel, because that will be very confusing for you. We have to create the objects and all that time. Sorry? We can loop it. We can loop it from. Just wait for some time. You have to. There are a lot of methods need to be used. Okay. So if I tell that also, it will be very confusing to everybody. Fine. So like this. We use multiple dimensions, right? Next, what we need to understand is the functions. This is what about the array. Okay, so we have the variables and scalar variable and array variable. When it is scalar variable, only one value you can store in that value. In that variable. When it's a array variable, we can store the collection of values. And when it is an array, then 2 types of arrays. Fixed size and dynamic array we have seen yesterday, and then arrays comes with multiple dimensions, like it can be a single dimension or multiple dimension. That means you can store a single collection of values or multiple collection of values in one array. So that's where the multi dimensions come into the picture. Okay, so this is the use of an array, but we are not using it for a real purpose. We have to wait for some time to get the real scenarios or real examples for those arrays, because that relates with some objects, that relates with some other processes, like we need to write loops or conditions, all those. Since we are very beginners, then explaining that will create a lot of confusions. Okay, fine. So next, what we need to understand is the functions. Which functions? I told built-in functions, right? Inbuilt functions. That will be our next concept. Inbuilt functions. Okay, before going for inbuilt functions or discussing about that, the first thing is, what is meant by a function? First question is, what is meant by a function? Anyone? Function is generic English term, it is. I will tell you one thing. Generally, we will speak like this when we are talking about some technical thing. Okay, so that is functioning. That button is functioning. Working fine. A function is nothing but maybe it's performing the action, required action, or it's working fine. Okay? So here a function meant for maybe performing an action, or it can be a single event. An action can be a single event, or it could be a transaction. Okay? A single transaction or flow of transactions, whatever it is. So a function is nothing but a generic term, or generic meaning of function is an action or an event. An action or an event or a transaction. That's what the function means for in a normal in a generic way. Okay. Then here, what is meant by function in the terms of language, any programming language or scripting language, whatever you take. In terms of programming, what is meant by function is a procedure. Function is nothing but a kind of procedure which performs certain action or a certain event or certain transaction. That's what the function meant for. Then again, in any language, whatever you take, just don't consider only VB script. Any language that whatever you take, there will be two types of functions or two types of procedures will be there. One is system defined and second one is user defined. One is system defined, and so system defined nothing but inbuilt, what we tell. Second one is user defined. What's meant by system defined or inbuilt? Then the language will give some set of functions for us which is ready made and then which can be used on the fly. That means those functions are already available in the program. You don't need to write any logics or anything to build that. So those functions are already given. You can directly use them. Okay? So without any effort. So that's what the inbuilt means for. So that means the functions which are given by the program or the language, those are called inbuilt or system defined functions. When it comes to the user defined, then the name itself says in user will write those functions. Then the question is here, when the system is already giving me some set of functions, or when the system is already giving the functions, why should I write again? That's an extra activity, or that's an extra pain for me, right? Why should I take that pain? Why should I write? The reason because when the system is given those functions, as I told, maybe a function not only just for an event, to maybe for some transactions and all you do. But will you do the same kind of transactions in every project? No. Will you do the same kind of transactions in every functionality? No. These are customized. Right? These are customized. But types of event that we perform may be same, but the inside that maybe the how the event flow and all will be, and the kind of loops or everything will be different from program to program. Logics are different because my requirements are different from a project to project, functionality to functionality. Right? But assume, there will be lakhs of customized procedures like this in the projects. Not only, don't consider only one project. Different projects are there. Now, when we are defining the language, then we cannot think about all, because we don't know what kind of requirements are coming in different projects, right? Then we cannot think about all the requirements globally in all the projects, and then I can give you the functions. I can't do that. Then I have to create lakhs of functions for you. But again, these requirements will be customized over the period. So I should be able to modify every time. So it's highly impossible for me to give you the inbuilt functions for every requirement that whatever you have. So that's the reason what we have done is, or what they have done is, they have taken the generic requirements, the generic things, what normally we perform, but not for a complete procedure, for single events or single small procedures. They've taken in a generic way and they have given only for those generic things. Right? So that means they will not give you the complete 100% solution for your requirement. No user-defined function gives you 100% solution. Maybe when it is your requirement exactly as that whatever that function is providing, then okay. but unfortunately 90% then user-defined functions will not give us the 100% solution. So that's the reason what you need to do is, by using those inbuilt functions, those are giving for generic things, right? Or they're just give you one-step solution, that's it, for a 1 step or 2 steps. Based on those functions, by using those functions, you can build your own logic on top of it as per your requirement. Then you can create the logic, whatever you have built, you can create that logic as a method for you. A single function or single method, single procedure. That's where the user-defined function has come into the picture. Because user-defined functions are not 100% solution provided for us. That means those won't give us 100% solution. They will give the base for us, that's it. Built-in functions give the base, that's it. On top of it, then you have to build the logic. Now let's say, for example, I will tell you what some of requirements that from one of my project. So the requirement is like this. Okay, I have to create same thing, whatever we are talking, purchase order, something like that. Then deliver date, when I say, then I will say after 5 days. I have one inbuilt function for current system date. I will add today's date as an ordered date. Created date, I will add as today's date. Then when I say requested date for delivery, then after 5 days or after 6 days. But what I mean to say here, after 6 days means after 6 business days. Always whenever we commit something, we commit for business days. When I say after 3 days, it means not exactly after. In between there is any holiday, or if there is any weekend, that will be excluded from this. But I have an inbuilt function in script available, one inbuilt function available in the VB script to add 6 days. But that inbuilt function, what it does is, it will not calculate, or it will not exclude the weekends and all. Including weekends, it will extend 6 days or 7 days like that. But my requirement says that I have to add 6 business days only, not the weekends and all. Then the requirement is customized here. I cannot use the function directly as it is. I have the function for adding a date, adding some days to the current date. But I can't use that because that function has come with the limitation saying that it will include the weekends also. But what I should do, I need to exclude the weekends and then generate the future date. So what I have to do, unfortunately, that this generating the future date has come multiple times throughout the project. There are a lot of places I need to use the same kind of logic. Then what I need to do here, I need to generate my own method which generates the future date by excluding the weekends. One example where you must have to create the user-defined function. But inside this, first I have to take the current system date and I will give 6. That means 6 business days for current system date. To get the current system date, as we have a function called date. So it doesn't, when I'm creating user-defined functions, doesn't mean that I'm not using inbuilt functions. By using inbuilt functions, you can define your own logics on top of it. Right? So you must have to use the inbuilt functions again. So that is one more requirement here is, in certain situations, okay, so what I have is here, I have a table, okay. So when I have a table in an application, when I want to retrieve the data from a table, I want to retrieve value under specific column, retrieve third value under maybe column name I will give, maybe assume that I have the table like this, okay, order ID. It's not in the database, in the application. That's called as a web table, we call it as, which is there in the application, we call it as a grid or a web table. I have an order ID, I have status of order, I have maybe received date, and I have for every purchase order I need to link supplier invoice later. So supplier invoice, linked supplier invoice, 4 columns I do have. Then what I need to do is I need to retrieve the status of third order. What I need to do, I need to say maybe 3 comma, status is in second column. Get the value from third row, second column. But when I do like this, what happens is the status, right? Then the columns may be shuffling. I mean, right now the order is like this: order ID, status, and receive date and supplier invoice. Then later they may shuffle the columns. Say, okay, order ID, supplier invoice, status, paid. Now the order has come to, sorry, status has come to third column or maybe fourth column, like that. So in such cases, I will not be able to use the function directly, because when I said 2 here, then this time 2, there is some other column has come in the second place. So in such cases, what I need to do is, I need to create one function whenever I provide the column name, that column name, I mean, function should take that column name, it has to return me the column number. Okay, so this status column is there in second column or third column or fourth column. It has to automatically fetch that. But I don't have any inbuilt function placed for it. Then to meet this requirement, what I have to do? I need to write my own logic. The logic goes like this. I need to count how many columns are there first, retrieve the column header for each and every column. Then if the column header is matching with the name what I provide, get that number. For which column the header is matched. But to count the column, to compare those column headers, all those I have to use inbuilt functions. But to get the actual number by using this logic, I need to write my own procedure. Lot of requirements like this. Requirements are customized. So in such cases, what we need to do is, we just can't depend only on the inbuilt functions. We must have to provide the user-defined. But again, why we are learning inbuilt functions even though we are defining user-defined? Because inside user-defined, again, we need to use inbuilt functions, but not for 100%. Maybe just to match 1 step or 2 steps like that. Yeah? So we should know what are all the functions available and what inbuilt functions I can use in what situation. At the same time, we should also know how we can define our own functions. That means user-defined functions. Okay. Anyway, when I said user-defined functions, inside that, some logics and all coming, right? So some loops we are writing, some conditions we are writing, all this. So once we learn those condition statements and loops, we understand how we can convert those logics into functions. But before that, we'll have to know how we can use inbuilt functions, right? Then when it comes to the inbuilt functions, in VB we have around maybe, nearly 100 functions we have, inbuilt functions in VB, or it's over 100, I mean more than 100 functions we have. But we don't need to use all those 100 functions. I mean, whatever we have, not required for us. We never use some of them. So those are out of scope for us, because when we know everything, that creates a lot of confusion for us. Okay, knowing more sometimes creates more confusion, because the things which we don't use, it's good to avoid instead of considering them. So here what we do is we will understand or we will learn the functions only whatever we use, not instead of all the functions. This comes around 60 to 65 functions that we do have. Okay, 60 to 65 functions generally we use very frequently. Then out of those, again, instead of learning all, we first, one by one, first categorize them into different categories of functions. Then we will go with category by category, one by one category, write down. Okay, so when we convert the user-defined functions into categories, then we will get the categories like this. Okay, so there are total, you can convert into, or you can categorize into 4 types. One is array functions, the functions which are related to arrays. Like, we just discussed about arrays, right? We are not yet done with that. Actually, we need to use some functions and all to get the size automatically, to get the values, all those. Second one is date and time functions. Date and time functions, which will be used to retrieve the dates or time. Manipulate to retrieve the data, to manipulate all those. Then string functions. String functions, that means to work with the strings, like to manipulate the strings and all, maybe converting from one case to another case, or maybe finding some value inside another value. Finding some word inside a string, or retrieving specific part of the string, or doing the comparisons. For all this we use the string functions. Then we have conversion functions and formatting. Conversion and formatting functions. Like conversion in a sense, while explaining the variable or data type, I just told something called C data. Right? So that's one of the function we have for conversion, that converts into date type. So if you want to convert from one type of data to another type of data and all, then you will use conversion functions. Formatting functions, in a sense, formatting the values, like maybe rounding a number. So generally when I have a value, then I want to round that number to a specific decimals. Okay? Or I have to format a value into ASCII. Something like that. There are a lot of things like that. Then to do such kind of conversions or formats, then we use these functions, conversion and formatting functions. And then there is, apart from this, we just say other functions. These are the main categories. Like message box, we used one of the function. But that message box is one of the inbuilt function we have, but that doesn't come in any of this category. That is just to display the value. Similarly, there is one more function called input box. Okay, I will explain that in detail. You don't need to write that. Input box is to provide the inputs during execution time. During execution time, it provides you a text field. There you can enter the whatever the value that you want to enter, then you can enter, so the value will be taken into the program. So during execution time, you can provide the values. So like this, there are some functions which won't come in any of these categories. So we just mark them as other functions. So we have to go category wise, but if you learn into all the functions one by one without doing this categorization, right, we will get confused. Okay, so in each category there are some set of functions, but again some of the functions I may avoid, I may skip, and some of the functions, even though they are important to know, still I skip some of them, because those functions will be understandable, or we can use only some real scenarios, or there are certain dependencies on those functions. Today, I don't know, you guys are not there. So one of the function we explained for the automation, eval function, there is something called, and I never explained in the VB script that well. But while explaining the tool, while implementing the automation, suddenly that function comes into the picture. Even though that function has come from VB script, but I didn't tell it. The reason, because there is some dependency on that function. So before we use that function, we have to understand those dependencies. We have to implement those dependencies. We should learn them first. Then only this function is understandable. Okay? So some functions I may skip, even though those functions are available, but it doesn't mean that we are skipping them permanently. But once we get that situation, obviously we get that situation. Once we get that, then again I will explain those functions. Okay? We'll stop here today. From tomorrow we'll start understanding these functions. Remember, these functions are very important for us. If you don't understand any functions, you can come back to me anytime. For a couple of days, or maybe 2-3 days, it will be the same time for you people. The reason, because for